You keep trying to control everything. Donate. The timing, PpThe, the results, how people see you, how things should turn out. You plan it all in your head like a perfect script. Every move calculated, every outcome imagined. You tell yourself, if I just do this right, if I push a little harder, if I don't let anything slip then everything will finally fall into place. But it doesn't, Devrena. Instead of peace, there's pressure. Instead of clarity, there's noise. Instead of progress, there's nosint. And deep down, there's a quiet question you've been avoiding. What if the problem isn't what if you're doing too little? What if the problem is that you're trying to control too much? Because here the truth most people never fully accept. The moment you demand life to obey your exact expectations, you begin to suffer, and the moment you shift your focus to what is actually yours to control it, everything changes. Not outside, inside, because your actions pass your actions, your mindset, your response, that's your territory. Everything else, that belongs to life, and life has never asked for your permission. As a strange kind of freedom that begins when you stop fighting reality, not giving up, not becoming passive, but releasing the illusion that you can command outcomes like a machine. Think about it. How much of your stress comes from things you cannot actually control? Waiting for a message, waiting for approval, waiting for results, waiting for things to go exactly how you imagined. You have convinced yourself that peace will come later, after the result, after the whiner, after everything every works out. But peace doesn't come from outcomes. Peace comes from alignment. And right now, you're not aligned. You split between what you can do and what you can do and what you are trying to force. That tension is what's draining you. Imagine someone painting a canvas. At first, they're tense. Every brushstroke is calculated. They keep stepping back, judging, correcting, trying to make it perfect. Nothing flows. Everything feels forced. But then something shifts. They stop obsessing over how it will turn out. They stop trying to control the final image, and instead, they just paint. Fully present, fully engaged, and suddenly something changes. The strokes become natural. Ideas begin to flow. The work feels alive, and ironically, that's results appear. Not when they were forcing perfection, but when they were immersed in the process. Your life works the same way. When you are obsessed with results, your mind becomes tight. Every delay feels like failure. Every obstacle feels like a threat. Every moment feels like you are falling behind. But when you shift your focus to the processing, something opens up. You become calmer. You think clearer. You act better. And life begins to move differently around you. Not because you're controlling it, because you are controlling it, but because you are finally working with it. Relationships reveal this truth more clearly than anything. When you're attached to how things must go, you create pressure, you overthink every word, you analyze every message, you try to secure something that hasn't even had space to grow, and that pressure, people feel it. Even if you don't say it, it turns connection into tension. But when you show up differently, and when you focus on being real, being present, being grounded, everything changes. Then there's space, then there's space, then there's ease, then there's ease, then there's honesty. And that is where real connection grows. Not under control, but under presence. Letting go of outcomes doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. They have as difference. You still give your best effort. You still show up with discipline. You still prepare, learn, and improve. But after you act, you release. You don't sit there asking, will this work? Every 5 minutes. Instead, you ask something more powerful. Fair and fair, did I show up fully in this moment? Because that's the only question that actually belongs to you. Everything else, that's the only question that actually belongs to you. Everything else, that's the response. And life responds in its own time. Start your day with one simple truth, and results are shared, action is yours. And when something doesn't go your way, don't rush to react. Pause. Observe. Because not every thought in your head is truth. Not every fear is a warning. Sometimes it's this noise. And you been treating noise like commands. That's why you feel overwhelmed. But the moment you create distance between you and your thoughts, and you regain control. Not control over life, but control over yourself. And that's where real power begins. When your mind starts racing, when anxiety builds, ask yourself one question. What here is actually what here is actually in my control? And not what you wish you could control. Not what you wish you could control. Not what you wish you could control. And not what you wish but what is realistically yours. Maybe it's your effort. Maybe it's your attitude. Maybe it's your attitude. Maybe it's your next step. Focus there. Everything else? Let it go. Because holding on to what you cannot control is like gripping water. The tighter you hold her, the faster it slips away. There are people right now working harder, but in the wrong direction. They are desperate. They send applications everywhere. They chase every opportunity. They say yes to things that don't align with them, not because it's right but because they are afraid of missing out. And every rejection hits them hard, because their identity is tied to outcomes they cannot control. Now compare that to someone else, same situation, but different mindset. They take time to understand themselves. They refine their skills. They move with intention. They don't rush. They don't scatter their energy. They act with clarity, and over time, life responds differently to them. Not because they had luckier, but because they had aligned. The same is true in relationships, in in work, in creativity, and everything. Desperation repels. Clarity attracts, and clarity only comes when you stop trying to control everything. Another shift that most people overlook, the way you see your life right now. If you constantly feel like something is missing, a niche, like you are behind a measure, like you don't have enough fatter, that feeling will follow you everywhere. Because it not your situation. It your perspective. You to strain your mind to focus on what is lacking. And now it sees lack everywhere. But what if you trained it differently? What if you started noticing, already here, the ability to grow, the chance to improve, the people who support you, the opportunities in front of you? These things seem smaller, until you realize they are the foundation of everything. Gratitude isn't just a nice idea, it's just a shift in awareness. And that shift changes how you experience your entire life. When you see abundance, you act differently. You take risks. You stay curious. You keep moving forward. But when you see scarcity, you panic, you cling, you fear, you hesitate, and fear blocks everything. Life hasn't changed, but your lens has. And your lens shapes your reality more than anything else. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. Challenges still come. Uncertainty still exists, but you stop seeing them as threats. You start seeing them as part of the path. Something to move through, not something to control. Because control was never the answer. Alignment was. And the more you align your actions with what you can actually influence, the lighter you become. Not weaker, lighter. Less resistance, less frustration, less mental noise. And from that place you move better, think clearer, live deeper. There is a quiet strength in people who understand this. They don't rush, they don't panic, they don't try to force life into a shape it doesn't want to take. They act with intention, and then they let go. And somehow things begin to fall into place. Not perfectly, but meaningfully. Because life was never meant to be controlled, it was meant to be lived. And the moment you stop fighting it, you finally start moving with it. There comes a moment, quiet and almost invisible, when you realize something you were never taught directly but have always felt in fragments. It is the moment you understand that the tension you carry is not coming from life itself, but from the grip you refuse to loosen. You begin to see that your exhaustion is not from effort, but from resistance. Resistance to uncertainty, resistance to change, resistance to outcomes you cannot shape, no matter how hard you try. And once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. You start to notice it in the smallest places. The way your thoughts race ahead of reality, trying to predict, trying to control, trying to secure a future that has not yet arrived. They don't chase. They don't chase. They don't chase. That were never fully in your hands to begin with. A message not answered fast enough. A result delayed longer than expected. A plan that shifts in ways you did not approve. It feels personal, but it is not. Life is not resisting you. It is simply unfolding in a way that includes more variables than your mind is comfortable accepting. And the more you try to force those variables into a fixed shape, the more friction you create inside yourself. This is where the shift begins. Not in changing the world, but in changing your relationship with it. You begin to understand that there are two lives running at the same time. One is the external life, made of events, people, opportunities, timing. The other is the internal life, made of perception, response, and meaning. Most people spend their entire existence trying to control the first, while completely neglecting the second. And that imbalance is the source of their suffering, because the external world will never fully obey you. It will surprise you, disappoint you, challenge you, and sometimes reward you. But it will never become predictable enough to guarantee your peace. Only the internal world can do that. And yet, that is the one place most people avoid. They avoid sitting quietly with their own thoughts because they are uncomfortable. They avoid questioning their beliefs because it feels destabilizing. They avoid observing their reactions because it exposes patterns they would rather not face. But the truth is simple. Even if it is difficult, if you do not take control of your inner world, it will take control of you. And when that happens, your life becomes a reaction instead of a creation. You begin to respond to every situation automatically. Anger rises and you follow it. Fear appears and you obey it. Doubt whispers and you believe it. Without realizing it, you become a passenger in your own mind, pulled in different directions by thoughts that were never examined. This is why awareness is power, not the kind of power that controls others, but the kind that stabilizes you. The moment you pause and observe your thoughts instead of immediately reacting to them, something changes. There is a space that appears, small at first, but incredibly important. In that space, you have a choice. You can follow the thought, or you can question it. You can react, or you can respond. You can continue the pattern, or you can interrupt it. This is not something that happens once and is complete. It is a practice, a quiet discipline that grows stronger over time. And like any discipline, it requires patience. There will be moments when you forget, moments when emotion takes over before awareness can catch up. Moments when you fall back into old habits and feel like nothing has changed. But something has changed, because now you notice, and that awareness is the beginning of transformation. As this awareness deepens, you begin to see your life differently. Situations that once felt overwhelming start to feel manageable, not because they have become easier, but because you are no longer adding unnecessary resistance to them. You start to ask a different question, not, why is this happening to me? But I want to respond to this. How do I want to respond to this? That single shift changes everything, because it moves you from victim to participant, from someone who is at the mercy of circumstances to someone who is actively shaping their experience within those circumstances. And this is where real strength begins to form. Not loud strength, not aggressive strength, but quiet, steady strength. The kind that does not need to prove itself because it is rooted in control over the self. You begin to understand that discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. The ability to choose your actions instead of being driven by impulse is one of the most powerful forms of independence a person can develop. It means you are no longer controlled by temporary feelings. You are guided by something deeper, something more stable. And from that place, your actions become more consistent. You show up even when you do not feel like it. You continue even when progress is slow. You remain steady even when outcomes are uncertain. Not because it is easy, but because you have stopped expecting it to be easy. This acceptance does not weaken you. It sharpens you. It removes the illusion that life should always go according to your plan and replaces it with a more useful understanding. Life will unfold in many directions, and your role is not to control every direction, but to navigate them with clarity and strength. And as you do this, something unexpected happens. You become less reactive and more intentional, less anxious and more focused, less desperate and more grounded. You begin to trust yourself, not because you can control everything, but because you know you can handle whatever comes. That trust is not built overnight. It is built through repeated action, through choosing awareness over reaction again and again, even when it is difficult. Over time, this creates a sense of inner stability that does not depend on external validation. You no longer need constant reassurance that things will work out, because you understand that even if they do not unfold as expected, you will adapt. And adaptability is one of the greatest forms of strength, because life rarely follows a straight line. There will be moments when everything feels aligned, when progress is visible, when effort seems to be rewarded quickly. And there will be moments when nothing seems to move, when doubt grows louder, when the path ahead becomes unclear. Both are part of the same journey, and neither defines you. What defines you is how you move through those moments. Do you collapse under uncertainty, or do you remain steady? Do you chase control, or do you practice clarity? Do you react, or do you respond? These choices, repeated over time, shape not just your results, but your identity. And identity is powerful, because once you begin to see yourself as someone who is disciplined, aware, and resilient, your actions start to align with that identity naturally. You no longer need to force yourself as much because you are acting in accordance with who you believe you are. This is why inner work matters so deeply. It is not separate from your external success. It is the foundation of it. Without it, you may achieve things, but you will not feel stable. You will always be chasing the next result, the next validation, the next confirmation that you are on the right path. With it, you can pursue your goals with intensity while remaining grounded in yourself. And that balance is rare. Most people swing between extremes. Either they become passive, avoiding effort altogether, or they become obsessive, trying to control everything. But there is a middle path, a path of committed action combined with inner detachment. You give your best effort, fully and honestly. You prepare, you learn, you improve. And then, once the action is complete, you release the outcome, not because you do not care, but because you understand the limits of your control. This allows you to move forward without carrying unnecessary weight. You are no longer burdened by every possible future. You're focused on the present, where your power actually exists. And in that focus, your energy becomes more effective, because scattered attention weakens effort, but concentrated attention strengthens it. You begin to do fewer things, but you do them better. You speak with more intention. You act with more clarity. You rest without guilt, and you work without hesitation. Your life becomes simpler, not because it lacks challenges, but because your approach to those challenges becomes clearer, and clarity removes confusion. When you know what is yours to control and what is not, decision-making becomes easier. You stop overthinking every possibility and start acting on what is in front of you. This does not eliminate fear. Fear will still appear. But now you see it differently. It is no longer a command that must be followed. It is information that can be observed, and that changes your relationship with it completely. Instead of running from fear or being controlled by it, you begin to move with it. You acknowledge it, but you do not let it decide your actions. This is courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And as you practice this, your confidence grows, not because everything becomes certain, but because you become certain in yourself. You realize that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is a constant. And instead of fighting it, you learn to navigate it. That is where freedom begins, not in controlling life, but in no longer needing to. There is a quiet kind of freedom that most people never experience, not because it is hidden, but because it asks for something they are unwilling to give. It asks for responsibility, not the kind that feels heavy and forced, but the kind that is honest and undeniable, the kind where you stop blaming circumstances, people, timing and luck, and you begin to look directly at yourself without distraction. This is the moment where everything starts to change, because as long as your focus stays outside, your power stays outside. You wait for things to improve, for people to understand you, for the right opportunity to appear, for the perfect time to begin. And while you wait, life keeps moving. Days turn into months, months into years, and slowly you realize that waiting did not protect you, it only delayed you. But when your attention turns inward, when you begin to take full ownership of your actions, your mindset, and your direction, something shifts immediately. You stop asking what life is giving you, and you start asking what you are doing with what life has already given. And that question is far more powerful, because it brings you back to the only place where change is actually possible. Right here, right now. You begin to see that your habits are not random. They are patterns that you have repeated so many times that they feel automatic. The way you think, the way you react, the way you spend your time. It all follows a structure that you have built, often without realizing it. And if that structure is not serving you, it will continue to limit you until you decide to change it. This is where discipline becomes essential, not as something rigid or extreme, but as something consistent, something that shows up every day, quietly shaping your life in ways that are not always visible immediately, but become undeniable over time. Discipline is what allows you to act when motivation is not there, because motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls depending on how you feel, what is happening around you, and how easy or difficult things seem in the moment. If you depend on motivation, your progress will always be unstable. But discipline is different. It does not ask how you feel. It asks what needs to be done. And when you begin to follow that, your life gains structure. You start to build routines that support your growth instead of working against it. You wake up with intention. You move your body not just for appearance, but for strength and clarity. You focus your attention on meaningful work instead of constantly seeking distraction. At first it feels uncomfortable, because your mind is used to ease. It is used to avoiding effort, to choosing what feels good in the moment rather than what is good in the long term. So when you begin to change this pattern, there is resistance. That resistance is normal. It is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are doing something new. And if you stay consistent through that phase, something important begins to happen. The same actions that once felt difficult start to feel natural. The habits that once required effort become part of your identity. You are no longer forcing yourself to act a certain way. You are becoming someone who acts that way. And this is where transformation becomes real. Because change is not just about what you do once or twice. It is about what you do repeatedly until it becomes who you are. This is why small actions matter more than big intentions. A single decision to improve means very little if it is not followed by consistent action. But small, repeated actions done every day build something powerful over time. They build momentum, and momentum changes everything. When you have momentum, starting becomes easier, continuing becomes natural. Progress becomes visible, and that visibility strengthens your belief in yourself. But there is something you must understand. Momentum can work in both directions, just as positive actions build strength. Negative habits build weakness. Just as discipline creates freedom, lack of discipline creates limitation. And the longer you stay in one direction, the harder it becomes to switch. This is why the present moment matters so much. Not because it is the only moment you have, but because it is the only moment where you can choose a different direction. Right now, you can continue the same patterns, or you can interrupt them. Right now, you can delay action, or you can begin. Right now, you can follow what is easy, or you can choose what is meaningful. These choices may seem small, but they are not, because they are shaping your future in ways you cannot fully see yet. And over time, those choices create a path that either leads to growth or stagnation, strength or regret, clarity or confusion. Most people do not realize this until much later. They look back and wonder how they arrived where they are. They search for a single moment, a single mistake, a single decision that changed everything. But the truth is rarely that simple. It is not one moment, it is many small decisions made daily without much attention, slowly building a direction. And by the time the result becomes clear, the pattern has already been established. This is why awareness is so important. Because when you are aware, you do not wait until the result appears to make a change. You recognize the pattern early and adjust it before it becomes permanent. You begin to ask yourself better questions. Not on, what do I feel like doing? But what kind of person am I becoming through this action? That question shifts your focus from temporary comfort to long-term identity. And identity is what drives consistency, because when your actions align with the person you want to become, discipline no longer feels like a struggle. It feels like alignment. You are not forcing yourself, you are expressing yourself, and from that place, growth becomes more natural. But there is another layer to this, something deeper than habits, deeper than discipline. It is purpose. Not a grand, complicated idea of purpose, but a simple understanding of direction. A sense that what you are doing has meaning, that your effort is connected to something beyond immediate results. Without this, discipline becomes difficult to sustain. Because if your actions feel empty, if they feel disconnected from anything meaningful, your mind will constantly look for ways to escape them. But when you connect your actions to a deeper reason, something changes. You are no longer just working. You are building. You are no longer just enduring. You are progressing. Even when the results are not immediate, the process itself feels valuable, and that feeling keeps you moving forward. Purpose does not always appear clearly at the beginning. Sometimes it develops over time, through action, through experience, through reflection. But it always requires one thing: movement. Because clarity does not come from thinking alone. It comes from doing, from engaging with life, from testing, adjusting, and continuing. So you move forward, even when you are not completely sure. You act, even when the path is not perfectly clear. You trust that direction will refine itself as you go. And in doing this, you build something most people lack: resilience. The ability to continue, not because everything is easy, but because you have decided that stopping is not an option. Resilience is not built in moments of comfort. It is built in moments of difficulty, when things do not go as planned, when effort does not immediately produce results, when doubt begins to grow. In those moments you have a choice. You can step back, Return to what is familiar and avoid the discomfort. Or you can stay, face it, and move through it. Each time you choose to stay, you become stronger, not in a dramatic way, but in a steady, lasting way. And over time, that strength becomes part of you. It shapes how you respond to challenges. It changes how you see obstacles. It allows you to remain calm in situations that would have once overwhelmed you. You begin to understand that difficulty is not something to avoid. It is something to work through. And as you do, your confidence grows. Not because you expect everything to go well, but because you know you can handle it if it does not. That is real confidence, not based on perfect outcomes, but on trust in your ability to adapt. And when you reach that point, something shifts again. You stop fearing the future, because you are no longer trying to control it. You are preparing yourself to face it. And that preparation, built through discipline, awareness, and consistent action, gives you a sense of stability that external circumstances cannot take away. Life will still change. Challenges will still come. Unexpected situations will still arise, but you will not be the same person facing them. You will be stronger, clearer, more grounded, and that makes all the difference. And as that strength settles within you, something subtle but powerful begins to unfold. You start to value silence in a way you never did before. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of clarity. The kind of silence where you are no longer distracted by constant input, constant comparison, constant pressure to be somewhere else, someone else, doing something else. In that silence, you begin to hear yourself more clearly. Not the loud, reactive voice that demands comfort and avoids effort, but the quieter voice beneath it, the one that has always known what matters. The one that does not rush, does not panic, does not chase every passing desire. The one that speaks with calm certainty, even when everything around you feels uncertain. Most people spend their entire lives drowning that voice out. They fill every empty moment with noise. Music, scrolling, conversations that lead nowhere, distractions that keep them from sitting still long enough to think deeply, because when they do sit still, something uncomfortable rises. Questions. Am I living the way I want to live? Am I becoming who I intended to become? Am I using my time, or am I losing it? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary, because without them, you can move quickly in the wrong direction for a very long time. Solitude gives you the space to ask them honestly, and more importantly, it gives you the space to listen to the answers without immediately trying to escape them. This is where self-mastery deepens. Not just in action, but in understanding. You begin to see your patterns more clearly. The habits that support you, and the ones that quietly hold you back. The thoughts that push you forward, and the ones that keep you stuck in cycles of doubt and hesitation. And once you see them, you can no longer pretend they are not there. That is the responsibility that comes with awareness. You are no longer blind to your own behavior. And that means change becomes a choice, not a mystery. You begin to remove what is unnecessary. Not just physical clutter, but mental clutter. The need to constantly compare yourself to others. The need to prove something to people who are not even paying attention. The need to chase every opportunity instead of focusing on the ones that truly matter. You simplify, and in that simplicity your energy becomes more focused. Because scattered energy creates weak results, but focused energy creates impact. You stop trying to do everything. You start choosing what is worth doing. And once you choose, you commit fully, without constantly looking for an easier path, without questioning your decision every time it becomes difficult, without stopping every time progress slows down. This level of commitment is rare, not because it is impossible, but because it requires patience. And patience is something most people struggle with. They want results quickly. They want progress to be visible immediately. They want effort to be rewarded without delay. But life does not always work that way. Some things take time, not because you are doing something wrong, but because they are being built at a level that cannot be rushed. And when you understand this, your relationship with time changes. You stop seeing it as something that is working against you. You start seeing it as something that is working with you. Every day becomes an opportunity to build, to refine, to improve, even when the results are not obvious. Especially when they are not obvious, because those are the moments where most people quit. They look at the lack of immediate progress and assume it is not working. They lose patience, lose focus, and move on to something else. And in doing so, they reset their progress again and again. But you do not. You stay. You continue. You trust the process, not blindly, but because you understand how growth actually works. Slow at first, invisible in the beginning, then, gradually, undeniable. This is how real progress happens, not in sudden bursts, but in consistent steps. And over time, those steps create something solid. Something that cannot be taken away easily because it was built with intention. As this becomes your way of living, your confidence begins to feel different. It is no longer loud or dependent on external validation. It is quiet, steady, unshaken by temporary setbacks. You no longer need constant proof that you are on the right path, because you know that the path itself is built through your actions. And as long as you continue to act with clarity, discipline, and purpose, you are moving forward, even if it does not always look like it. This is where patience and resilience come together. You learn to endure without losing direction. You learn to adapt without losing focus. You learn to continue without needing constant reassurance. And this combination is powerful because it allows you to move through life with a sense of control that does not depend on controlling everything. You control yourself, your actions, your mindset, your response. And that is enough, more than enough, because from that foundation everything else becomes easier to navigate. Challenges do not disappear, but they no longer feel overwhelming. Uncertainty does not vanish, but it no longer creates panic. Failure does not destroy you because you no longer see it as an end. You see it as feedback, as information, as part of the process. And this perspective keeps you moving. It prevents you from getting stuck. It allows you to adjust, to learn, to improve without losing momentum. Over time, this creates a sense of progress that is not fragile. It does not depend on everything going perfectly. It depends on your ability to continue. And that is something you can control. This is the essence of self-mastery. Not perfection, but consistency. Not control over everything, but control over yourself. Not avoiding difficulty, but facing it with clarity. And as you live this way, something else begins to change. Your presence, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you move through situations. People notice it, even if they cannot explain it. There is a calmness in you, a steadiness that does not react to every small disturbance, a focus that is not easily distracted, a confidence that does not need to announce itself. This is not something you can fake. It is the result of the work you have done internally, the discipline you have built, the awareness you have developed, the choices you have made repeatedly, even when they were difficult. And this presence influences everything around you. Your work improves because your attention is deeper. Your relationships strengthen because your communication is clearer. Your decisions become better because they are not driven by impulse. You become someone who creates stability not just for yourself but for others as well. And this is where your impact grows, not through force, not through control, but through example. People are drawn to those who are grounded, to those who remain steady in uncertain situations, to those who act with intention instead of reacting with emotion. And without trying to, you begin to influence others, not by telling them what to do, but by showing them what is possible. This is the quiet power of living with clarity and discipline. It does not demand attention. It earns respect. And as your life continues to unfold, you realize something important. The goal was never to control everything. It was to become someone who could handle anything. And that is what you are building. Step by step, choice by choice, moment by moment. Subscribe,